Hey, CrossFitters, welcome back. It's Coach Bob here, CrossFit Glen Burnie, and today we're going to take a look at why our training program includes two important variables to improve and help maximize our healthy outcomes. Now, we all know that a sedentary lifestyle leads to some unhealthy outcomes, but we also believe that being active and taking care of our nutrition can help improve and give us good results, right? But it turns out there are two important factors that lead to better outcomes. And when we're looking at our training, we want to make sure that we are including these two factors in our training, and we're doing it in a way that's going to help improve overall health and fitness. So what I want to do in today's video is to share those two factors with you and to give you a little bit of background as to why we believe that these two factors are critically important in a well thought out, well-designed exercise program. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into a little bit of the fundamental science, and then I'm going to go through a scholarly article that's going to give us a little bit of the foundations for why we believe these two factors are very important. All right, so first of all, let's just jump on over. All right, the first thing we're going to take a look at is something called cellular respiration. Now, cellular respiration is the process by which organisms are going to combine oxygen with foodstuff molecules, diverting the chemical energy in these substances into life-sustaining activities and discarding the waste products as carbon dioxide and water. So basically, we need to understand that although on the outside we're doing work, we're doing pull-ups, we're doing burpees, and we're lifting weights, what's happening in the inside? Well, we think about our strength and we think about our aerobic endurance, but deep down inside, our cells are busy converting the good nutrition that we have into good energy. And so in order to improve overall healthy outcomes, we need to think about how do we make sure that cellular respiration is doing its best. Now, cellular respiration requires or depends in a big way on mitochondria. And so the mitochondria, when we kind of take a look at this cartoon picture, it's responsible for taking the glucose, which is transported across the cell membrane, and converting that glucose into the energy currency, like ATP, for example. I was going to say cryptocurrency, not cryptocurrency. The overall energy currency of our cells is going to be ATP. But the important part is that the mitochondria are the organelles that are responsible for creating that ATP that our body's going to need. Now, when we think about adaptation of the mitochondria, we can think of two types of adaptation that the mitochondria might have. The first one is, what if we just had more or larger mitochondria, right? There was just more volume of mitochondria in the cells. Well, then we would be able to do more because you'd have more mitochondria creating more energy. So that's adaptation number one. Adaptation number two is, what if each mitochondria we had was able to actually process more glucose than it did before? So it's actually performing more cellular respiration than it did before through increasing in the amount of cellular respiration that mitochondria can do. So those two types of adaptation are key and important when we think about improving the overall function of cellular respiration. Number one, having more volume of mitochondria available. And number two, the mitochondria that we do have, being able to process more through more cellular respiration. Okay, so I have a scholarly article that I want to share with you. And this provides a lot of the foundation for the thinking behind these two important factors that I'm going to share with you in a second of our training and why we think those two factors are important. So this article is a meta-analysis. So basically, they took lots of articles over the years and they combined them together to see what was the common themes and what was the data showing as far as what kind of things could we draw from all of these different studies. This article is titled "Training-Induced Changes in Mitochondrial Content and Respiratory Function in Human Skeletal Muscle." This was published in Sports Medicine fairly recently, 2018. Let's take a look at the abstract, because I think the abstract is going to give us the best condensed form of what their results are, and I'll try to pull out some of the things. So what we're looking for are the two factors that we like to think about when we're looking at our overall training plan. And both of those factors are actually identified in this article, which I think is super awesome. So a sedentary lifestyle linked to a number of metabolic disorders. We know that endurance training can induce increases in mitochondrial content or mitochondrial functional qualities, which are associated with improved health and well-being and longer life expectancy. Well, gosh, I want all of that. So what they try to do is they're trying in this paper to better define how manipulating key factors or key parameters in our training can influence both of those kinds of outcomes in the mitochondria or better improve. So if we can understand, hey, maybe if I go to the gym 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, is that better than just going once or twice? That kind of a thing. Or should I just be riding on the bike for 60 minutes? Is that better? Or should I be going and sprinting and doing a sprint interval? Or should I be doing some form of high intensity interval training or something else, right? So what are those different things and how do they, what does the data tell us about those two things? So they look at them and they actually find that, well, let's go to the actual article. Yep. Okay, so again, the abstract, the key points. So let's take a look at the key points that they actually came away with after doing their analysis. Training volume, and this is variable number 1. Training volume, and training volume, guys, is when we think about training volume, we're looking at a combination of how often we're training. So, a common question that I get when somebody's starting CrossFit is, how often should I come to the gym? Should I be planning on working out 3 times a week? Or is it better to work out 5 times a week and that kind of thing? So when we think about training volume, it's a combination of the frequency, how many times that we're training, and adding all that up together along with the duration of that training exercise. So we have 60-minute classes, for example, and during that 60-minute class, in addition to the warm-up and the skill session part, maybe we're doing a 15, 20-minute, 25-minute workout or something like that. So you would add up all of that work that you do, and you would be able to compare, what is the outcome of somebody who's training just once a week to somebody who's training twice a week, to someone who's training 3, 4, 5 or so times a week. Is there a difference in the adaptation that we're seeing in that cellular respiration or in the mitochondria? So that's training volume, and it seems to be an important determinant of training-induced increases in the mitochondrial content. And so this is an effect that may be driven by training duration, whereas exercise intensity appears to be a key factor of training-induced increases in mitochondrial respiration. So they make a clear distinction between the training volume and the training intensity. And that is the two variables that we use when we look at putting together a training plan. The training volume, which is your daily workout, and then the training intensity is the variation of the training types and modes and time domains and intervals that we do throughout the week. Monday's workout, it was, let's say, a high intensity interval workout. Tuesday was more of a threshold workout. Wednesday was more of a sprinty kind of a workout, and so on. And so when we're putting together training plans, we're combining both the overall volume along with the changes in the intensity. And so we're taking both of those things into account. So taking a look at the major findings of this study, we would see that training volume and in training intensity are important in getting the adaptations in the mitochondria that we would like to have. Okay, so let's scroll down, see, because they had more key points. So training induced changes in mitochondrial content and respiratory function seem to be differentially regulated and not necessarily associated with one another. And so that's another key part, right? So it's not, one or the other. You can't get both increases in mitochondrial content as well as increases in cellular respiration by doing just more days necessarily, right? So if I don't change my intensity, and so a lot of the studies, and I think this is important, right? A lot of the studies that are collecting data on this, they're putting someone on a bike and they're having them train at 55% or 75% of their training intensity, max heart rate, that kind of a thing, for 40 minutes and so on. And they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. They train 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They do the same exercise. They do it for 6 weeks and they measure the results, right? That's not CrossFit because we don't do the same thing over and over again. That being said, when we look at what the study is telling us, though, is that if we're doing the same thing over and over again, you'll see some level of improvement in the mitochondrial content, and you can't get more of that by changing the intensity, right? It all comes down to being consistent and training regularly and getting a certain amount of volume. On the other hand, the cellular respiration does depend on the level of intensity, right? We have to get high levels of intensity in order to see the improvements in the cellular respiration. But if we only train at a moderate level of intensity over and over and over again, you're not going to see that level of improvement. So they are differentially regulated, meaning not necessarily associated with one another. So you need to have both. So high intensity interval training at a relative exercise intensity greater than 90% of the maximal power output provides the greatest absolute increase in mass specific mitochondrial respiration, whereas all out sprint interval training appears to be the most efficient type of exercise to improve respiratory functions in total training volume and or time. Okay, we know this too, so it's really cool. That's why we have more than one type of workout during the week and during our month and so on. You'll see high intensity interval training, yes, but we'll also have those sprint intervals, and we need to have those. And we'll also have the threshold workouts. And so really and we'll have weightlifting workouts, and we'll have max effort and so on. And the combination of all of these things together allow us to gain the maximum amount of adaptation in cellular respiration on one hand, as well as providing maximum opportunity for people to train every day. And so by being able to maximize both our training volume and our training intensity, we're able to actually overall increase and maximize our healthy outcomes. And that's what we really try to do during our planning of all of these workouts for us, for our daily workouts. And as a tangent, you can imagine, sometimes we get the question of, well, why don't we have more strength days, right? So if we put more strength exercises in, that would be good for developing strength, but it would take away from the variation of levels of intensity, for example, as well as we tend to find that it's going to limit the amount of volume we can get done during the week as well, with combining and overemphasizing one area like strength versus all the other levels of intensity and aerobic fitness and so on. And so we try to maximize all of those things and balance all of those things. So we have a balance of strength training along with a balance of interval training and threshold type workouts and variations, so that we can maximize, again, both of those variables of overall volume that we can do, so we can come to the gym regularly and not be really beat up and not be able to attend regularly, right? As well as being able to have that variation in intensity throughout the week as well. Let's see what else the article may help us with. The adaptations to exercise training are rapidly reversed following different types of detraining. However, these can be maintained when a sufficient training stimulus is provided. So we could dig down in a little deeper. And as I read through the article, when they look at the rapid reversal of these training effects, what they were seeing was on the order of about a week or two, right? So if we stop training for a week or two, we will see a significant decrement in the adaptations in the mitochondria. So if you've ever been away from, a CrossFit workout for a week or more, you know how hard it is to kind of get started again. And so there's a number of good reasons why we want to try to stay consistent to avoid that detraining effect, which makes it so much harder to get back on the wagon and get started once again. That being said, the converse of that, which is by continuing to train and by continuing to vary the intensity, what we see is that we can keep our desire to train high, and we can also continue to see improvements in the healthy factors that we're really looking at, improving both cellular respiration as well as the mitochondrial content and volume. Now, some of the data in the study did see some plateauing of the mitochondrial content, maybe indicating that there's a maximum amount that we can kind of get to. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that and what I think is going on there. And I think that the design of a lot of the studies, my hypothesis here is that the design of a lot of the studies is, they're doing the same exercise over and over and over again. And we know that at some point you're going to adapt to that stimulus, and it's no longer going to be relatively as hard as it was before. You won't see as much adaptation, and so you will plateau. And we do take this into account by continuing to vary the mode, the time domain, the stimulus of our workouts. And that's why it's important for us to have our workouts not only be high intensity, but also constantly varying, so that we can avoid that plateau that we're going to see if we're always doing the same thing over and over again. On the side of the cellular respiration and the mitochondria, they did make note of the amount of oxygen that the mitochondria could produce was more numerous or greater, I should say, than the amount of oxygen we would actually be using in our exercise. So they found that to be a little bit interesting in that the adaptation for cellular respiration went beyond what was actually required. And I know, a lot of times we kind of think of, well, you raise the stimulus and then the body kind of moves up to that new level of stimulus, and you raise it again and it goes up to that. So I think they found it interesting that the amount of oxygen that all these mitochondria could produce and whatnot, the amount of cellular respiration was greater than the demand of the exercise. And that would kind of indicate that other factors would be limiting the amount of like VO2 max, for example. And we know that there's going to be an upper limit on that, or more likely lactate threshold, and just being undertrained and not spending enough time at the lactate threshold to get sufficient adaptation there. And so, there are additional factors in our training plan that we also plan for. But we wanted to let you know about these two main factors, both the overall training volume as well as the intensity, and how a well thought out training plan would take care of both of those. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight as we kind of took the deep dive on cellular respiration to help us to have a better understanding about why we train the way we do. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the gym. Take care. Have a good night for 2022. Peace.